There we go. Make sure all that looks good. Excellent. And welcome, y'all, to another Mental Health Monday. I am very excited. You might notice that this looks a little bit different. My guest tonight is Mia Hanks, and she is audio only. So I've got a beautiful picture of her cover over here next to me, and you get to see my facial expressions today and focus on me. But Mia, thank you so much for taking the time out tonight to have this conversation. I'm really excited for this. I think it's going to be great.
Thank you. I'm excited too.
Yeah. We are going to be talking tonight about surviving narcissistic abuse, which, as y'all know, is something that is very personally relevant to myself. It's a lot of my story as well. So I'm very interested to get into this and really kind of dig in with someone who's been through some similar things, it sounds like. So I'll tell you a little bit about Mia, but before I do, we are going to have a question queue open. So if you are interested in asking our guests any questions tonight, feel free to pop a question into the chat and we will make sure to get it asked while we are live here today. So a little bit about Mia. Mia Hanks is a survivor of narcissistic abuse. She was married to a covert narcissist for 29 years and is the author of the award-winning memoir, Bridemaid. Mia is hoping that her story can help raise awareness about narcissism and help other victims find their voices. And if you are interested in this topic, you're interested in learning more about Mia or her book, feel free to pop over to any of these links that I am about to post. This is for her website, for her Instagram, for her TikTok. Feel free to connect there. And if you do connect, I know I say this every week, but if you do connect, please make sure that you engage in some way, whether that's liking a couple posts, leaving a comment on a couple of posts, reposting a couple of posts. That is what really makes a difference for everyone. So with that being said, again, Mia, thank you. Welcome to the show. I'm just so excited to have you here and to have this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what do you enjoy doing when you are not busy writing or otherwise raising awareness about everything you've been through?
So I am an avid crocheter.
Hmm.
I crochet, yeah, and I think I started doing that probably as a means to deal with stress,
Yeah.
kind of toward the end of my marriage, and it was just a great way to channel that stress and to do something detail oriented. I just found that it's good for your mental health, I think. So yeah, I'm all about crochet. I absolutely love it.
Now, do you crochet? I know some people crochet like creatures or blankets or
Yeah,
clothes or that kind of thing. Where do you go with it?
I do like the stuffed toys.
Oh, nice.
Not really interested in the clothes. The blankets get a little boring for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of like the cute little stuffed animals and stuffed toys. It's very satisfying.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, they can get really cute. And it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun to see what people can come up with. It is so creative, and it's definitely one of those things that I just think that it's adorable whenever someone makes something for someone by hand and gives it to them. My sister has made different things for me, and when my youngest was born, she made this little hat for my youngest, and it was very cute. And I've got some really cute pictures of him in that hat. And yeah, my other sister does a lot of tatting also. I don't know if you're familiar with
Okay.
tatting. Um,
A little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. That's really neat.
It's a
But
lot
when
of
I
fun.
was at the end of my marriage, one of the things that I started doing, and it's interesting that you say like, detail oriented and just something creative, because I started doing nail art.
Okay.
And it
Yeah.
was
Again, detail and
Yeah,
yeah.
it was just like that. I need something I can control. I need something that I can express. And that's kind of how I got into doing my own nails. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's neat.
Way to channel that stress. I think there's therapeutic benefits to creating.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. Do you have a true crime story that fascinates you?
True crime story. Yeah, I have a couple. I've always been super intrigued by the John Benet Ramsey case. I think most people
Mm,
are familiar with that one. And then there's another really wild one that doesn't get as much notoriety, I guess. But there was three missing women in Springfield, Missouri, back in like 1992, I believe. Vanished without a trace, and never to be seen again. So that one always intrigued me as well. Just very tragic, but and just fascinating how something like that could happen. It kind of it's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, that was back in the 90s, right? The Springfield 3 was in the 90s.
Yeah, the Springfield 3. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. It was 92,
Yep.
and nothing. I mean, there's just how three people can simultaneously go missing seems almost impossible
Yeah.
with not. So, yeah, that was an amazing case. And to my knowledge, there's really no leads.
Yeah. It's interesting that both of those are like we don't have necessarily the answers for those. Do you
No,
think that there's something there that you're kind of interested in the unfinished stories of those or
think so. Yeah, just it's the mystery. The
yeah.
mystery behind that and wanting to get answers, but they just
Hmm.
don't seem to be coming. So, yeah, it's I find the suspense. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's neat to think about that someone's life can take such an awful turn and then at the same time it can just spark all of these investigations. So uh, part of some of the things that I've been through is that my grandfather went missing in 2017 and it sparked so much controversy in the
Wow.
online world. Like there are pages dedicated to his disappearance and all kinds of stuff. And it's like they go down these rabbit holes of, oh, look at so and so and their life and all this stuff. And it's like eventually, and we did wind up finding his remains several years later. We found, I think, in 2023, we found his remains. So, you
Well,
know,
you
it's
have to wait.
yeah, it's a long time. So he went missing in 2017, and that's 5 years of not knowing, and people giving people that time to speculate. And then in these cases, it's like decades of
Yeah.
speculation, and
Yeah.
you really might not have answers. We don't even have all the answers, and we found his remains. So, you know, um,
Always questions.
yeah. But you can go down some rabbit holes when you start looking at people's lives, and you never know what's relevant and what's not, because
That's right.
everyone has stuff going on behind closed doors that you would never otherwise know about. And if
That you
you're,
don't know about.
yeah,
Yeah.
if you don't know what
I think
someone's
that's the
going
case
through,
for
yep,
you don't. I think that's the case for so many people.
yeah,
I mean, myself included. When I was married, it's you don't always share
yeah,
the struggles. I think we all, as humans, we want people to think that we have it all together, that our life is perfect, and we kind of, we'll kind of, I guess, lie to ourselves, really,
mm-hmm,
um, to make ourselves seem like everything's great.
yeah, and
It's hard to ask for help. It's hard
it
to
is,
admit that it's not good, and it's hard to say that, hey, I think this isn't right, and I think I need help. I
mm-hmm,
think we'd rather sometimes just sweep it under the rug and pretend like it's all good, and everybody lives like this, but
yeah,
I think somewhere deep inside we know that's not true.
yeah. So we are here to talk about surviving narcissistic abuse, and I want to start because you in your bio, you talked about being married to a covert narcissist. So I want to dig into that a little bit. How would you describe covert narcissism to someone who might not be familiar with it? Maybe they've only heard the term narcissist and not the term covert narcissist. How would you describe that?
So covert narcissism, it's actually considered to be one of the most dangerous types of narcissism. The reason is these people do not look like narcissists. They are not, to the outside world, they are not arrogant. They're not pompous. They're extremely empathetic. They're not really, but this is the mask they wear to on the outside. They appear empathetic. They are kind and generous and humble, all around great. My ex-husband looks like the great guy, father of the year, husband of the year. Everybody thinks he's great, but behind closed doors, he's actually a narcissist. And so he's controlling, manipulating. Everything's about him. Everybody has to kind of keep him on a pedestal. And so it's such a diverse from what he's showing the outside world to how he is on the inside behind closed doors. It's just it's complete opposite. And so it becomes dangerous because for the victim, it's very hard to get people on the outside to believe you.
Hmm.
You can't go and say, well, actually, this person is very abusive and manipulating, and my health is struggling because of the stress I'm living under. Nobody, a lot of times, a lot of people are not going to believe you, because what they see is this wonderful, wonderful man.
Yeah.
So it's covert narcissism is a tricky thing.
Yeah. And you do need people to believe you. Like it can be, of course you can do things yourself, and you don't necessarily always have to have this huge support system to get out of situations that you are not safe in. But it's way easier if you have some people in your corner. And in order to have them in your corner, they have to believe you. And so that's really difficult sometimes.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it is the reason why a lot of women, especially women victims, end up staying in these relationships because they just don't have the support they need to get out.
Yeah. Yeah. For those of you who are just joining in the chat, our conversation tonight is about surviving narcissistic abuse. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that you want to throw out there, feel free to pop those into the chat. We'll make sure to address them here. And Winter, it is great to see you again. Thanks for coming back today. Now, the word narcissist, it gets a lot of exposure these days. You hear it all the time in videos and social media. And I know that some people feel like it's getting overused. So how do you differentiate between someone who's just selfish and someone who is a true narcissist?
So, narcissistic personality disorder is an actual personality disorder. So, it's not just traits. Somebody can be arrogant. That does not mean they're a narcissist. A narcissist, it runs much deeper than just being really full of yourself or thinking you're really great. It's much deeper than that. These people there's actually a DSM list of 9 traits. And I believe if you have 5 or more, you potentially have the personality disorder. Off the top of my head, it's things like they they think they deserve all the praise. They think they're more important than everybody else. They tend to only want to socialize with people who are as quote unquote important as they are. They tend to think that people are very envious of them, which can make them very paranoid.
Mm-hmm.
They have little to no empathy. I mean, and these are things that they don't just act this way, they truly are this way. They truly do believe that everyone should bow down to them, that they are the most important person in the room. It runs far deeper than just being a personality quirk or a personality trait.
And it infiltrates a lot of aspects of their lives too, generally, with narcissistic
Really does.
personality disorder. It's not just, they're not just going to be a narcissist in one relationship, in their primary romantic relationship. They'll be a narcissist also in their work relationships and in their family relationships. And it's funny because once you know what it looks like, it's so much easier to see. But it's so
Right, but
hard to initially recognize.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know what to look for.
Mhm.
And especially when I got married over 30 plus years ago, no one was talking about narcissism.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know that was a personality disorder.
Mhm.
And so, I didn't know what I didn't know. And certainly I didn't know what to look out for.
Yeah. And I think that word narcissist is getting a lot of exposure right now. And some people might say that it is being overused, but honestly, is it? because I think it is just getting that exposure and letting people know, hey, this is a thing that you could look out for and that you could try to stay safe from. Of course, they're also very good at the beginning of a relationship in masking that and can really take you on some journeys at the beginning of a relationship that will make you wind up somewhere completely different several months to a couple years later. But yeah, sure, it's being used a lot. It's being talked about more. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that it's probably a good thing. And maybe some people are getting called narcissists who aren't truly narcissists, but there's something there they need to work on.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think we do tend to overuse the term as far as labeling people narcissists. I mean, a
Mhm,
lot of people that, you might think are a narcissist, they probably aren't. It doesn't impact that much of the population, but it is really important to know, these people, they really don't have empathy. They can't see things from other people's perspectives. Those are real hallmarks, and things that you will notice first about them. So it is really important to be able to know how to spot these people.
mhm,
And like you say, it doesn't, it's not overnight. You don't get in a relationship with them and the next day they become abusive.
mhm.
It's just not how it works. They're very calculated. And like you say, they'll take you on a journey, and it begins with the love bombing, and it just kind of builds and builds, and they see just how far they can push you, really,
Yeah.
is what it comes down to. And then the gaslighting, and before you know it, before you realize what's going on, you are so deep into this
Mhm.
that it's hard to just up and leave.
Yeah. And I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but also just the amount of isolating that they wind up doing before you have realized it makes it that much harder.
It does,
And
yes.
yeah. So we're kind of dancing around a little bit. Can you talk about your marriage and kind of when you first realized you were in a relationship with a covert narcissist?
Early on, I saw things that I just wrote off as personality quirks, things I didn't like. But I was 21 years old when I got married,
Yeah.
and again, I just didn't know what I didn't know.
Hmm.
I saw, and very early on, that lack of empathy that I talked about. For example, if I was sick, or anything like that, he, rather than be sympathetic, rather than say, "Oh, you're not feeling well. How can I help you?" His first reaction was to be mad at me
Mm,
because it was a disruption, you know, and how dare you disrupt my day? This wasn't in my plans. That's what's going through his head. And so, I noticed that early on, and I thought, how odd. I've never seen anyone that gets mad at somebody because, they've got the flu or something. I mean, it just
yeah.
seemed crazy. But again, I thought, well, I mean, I was new in this marriage, and of course you want to make your marriage work. So I tended to ignore a lot of things,
Hmm.
and just that, not being able to self-reflect, that narcissists can't apologize. And if they do, it's not genuine. So constantly turning things around. If I brought up something that I would say, hey, I really didn't like when you said this or when you did this. His response was never, oh, I'm sorry. I'll do better next time. It was, well, your reaction is not typical, and there must be something wrong with you, and you're too sensitive. And it always came back to me. So those were things very early that started very early. And then those little things just, they build.
Yeah.
It's like a snowball effect.
Were there, before you got married, I don't know how long you were in a relationship before you got married, but were there some early red flags that looking back now, you realize that, oh, I maybe could have seen that something was not quite right, or that you rationalized at the time?
Um, yeah, looking back, I think everything was about him. It was
Mm,
about what he wanted. What it was never about what I wanted to do. It was about what he wanted to do. And it was almost like it was my job to entertain him. Everything revolved around him. And I allowed it to, you
hmm.
know. I tend I then and now kind of this people pleasing part of my personality. And of course, those are the types of people that narcissists gravitate towards.
Oh yeah.
So I allowed that to happen. And then, you give them an inch, they take a mile.
Yeah. Yeah. I know for me, there were a lot of red flags that I ignored. I was also young. And I ignored a lot. I really did. And part of what I ignored was something that sometimes could just be like a sweet thing, like introducing me to his kids within weeks of meeting him. Like within 2 weeks of meeting him, not just, oh, multiple weeks, 6 weeks, 2 weeks. of meeting him. We were suddenly spending a lot of time with his two boys. And looking back, like, okay, in some cases, maybe that could be a nice thing. But in this case, it really wasn't. He was just trying to get us together. We had our first Christmas together as a family, is how he put it. That was a couple of weeks into dating. I think it was like 3 weeks into dating. So we had an official family Christmas 3 weeks into dating. And looking back, I'm like, I thought it was sweet. I thought it was nice, but combined with everything else that was going on that I also either rationalized at the time or overlooked, just kind of he was the victim in every story. Nothing was his fault in any relationship or anything like that, which, why you're in a new relationship, you're not looking for holes. You're not looking for things to question necessarily.
Right. That makes sense. You're not looking to pick the story apart,
Yeah.
and you tend to be very forgiving of these little things. And like, what you just mentioned, I mean, in a new relationship, you're not going to rationalize that this is moving too fast.
Yeah.
Instead, it looks like, well, this is really sweet and this is really
Mhm.
nice. So it's easy to to kind of have your vision clouded a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just easy to fall into their trap.
Especially if you're not thinking that way. And if you're not
Mhm.
used to people thinking that way either. Because it's
Right.
bizarre. Like it's a bizarre thing to me to think of viewing life that way. And even now,
Yeah,
I'm like, I still don't understand how you live the way that you live.
yeah, I think as somebody who's an empath, um, you can't rationalize that somebody could think along those terms. It just does not seem
Yeah.
it doesn't seem real. So yeah, it's hard. I tend to want to give people the benefit of the doubt, and that's what I was doing way back then. But yeah, the other thing you mentioned is the victim. Always the victim.
Yes.
That is a red flag.
Yeah, for sure. I just didn't know it at the time. Didn't know that was a red flag.
Yeah.
I know now. So what do you think are some of the biggest misconceptions about narcissistic abuse?
I think the biggest misconception is that people assume, hey, if it's bad enough, you'll leave.
Mm,
People don't realize, unless you've lived through it, it's hard to understand the complexities and the mental abuse that's happening, just psychologically, where these people have you. It's not so simple to just say, this person is really treating me bad, and so I'm going to pack up and I'm going to leave.
yeah.
It's just not, you're mentally, you're not there, and you can't just do that. So I think for outsiders looking in, saying, well, it can't be that bad. If it was that bad, you would leave. But it is that bad. And and at least in my case, you feel trapped.
Yeah.
So definitely people don't really see the complexities of what's going on psychologically.
Yeah. And even in situations where there is a horrendous, physically traumatic abuse, it's still hard to leave. It can be really, really bad. You can wind up in the hospital multiple times. There are statistics out there. It's like victims wind up trying to leave or deciding to leave 7 times before they finally do. And it's like, that sounds wild because you would love to think, if I were in that situation, I would leave the moment XYZ happened. And when you're
It's easy to
in,
say that, right?
yeah,
It's
so
easy
easy.
to hindsight is 2020, and the 7 times statistic is interesting to me. Um, I I don't. I mean, I don't know, but I'm speculating that 7 times. I don't think that applies to narcissistic abuse.
Mm,
In my opinion, I think if you go back once, probably you don't get back out. You probably stay.
mm,
You know, once they've won, once they've gotten you back, I've got to think that it's, orders of magnitude more difficult
yeah.
to get out a second time, and probably so daunting that most victims just stay.
Hmm.
So I don't know. The 7 times statistic is intriguing. I just wonder if that is the statistic for narcissistic abuse. I doubt that it is.
Yeah. And yeah, that's specifically for physically abusive situations.
Physical. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about narcissistic abuse situations because it's so much more complicated and difficult to get official help for something like that. If
Yeah.
not nearly impossible to get official help for that, except from a personal therapist or something. In rare cases, are you going to get law enforcement involved? In rare cases, can you even prove anything?
Can't prove it, right. I mean, it's, the odds are stacked against you.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's a very difficult situation to be in.
Yeah, it really is. We've got a great question in the chat. This is from Bite Mark. She would like to know, what is your favorite poem?
My favorite poem. I don't really know. I mean, I don't read a lot of poetry. I remember as a kid reading Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven. I thought that was pretty cool. I like The Raven, and I think Robert Frost has that one about the road not taken. I like
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah, the paths diverged, and what is it? The two
I took the road less.
yeah,
road less.
the road less traveled by.
Road less traveled. Yeah,
It's like
That's
two
kind of-
roads diverged, or the woods diverged, or something like that.
yeah.
I love The Raven. The Raven is such a good one, also. And every time anyone mentions The Raven, I always think of the Simpsons episode with The Raven. I don't know if you watch The Simpsons at all,
Not
but
a lot.
there's one episode, and I think it's is it Bart that's the Raven itself? I don't know. It's hilarious. And every time I think of The Raven, that is the one that pops into my mind. Yeah. Which is a great one. So what was the turning point for you deciding to leave?
I was having a lot of physical symptoms. The stress, the fight or flight, that I was living under, was really having a lot of effect on my body. I was having chronic pain, headaches, stomach aches, and I just felt sick all the time. It was the worst feeling. And I really just decided that I need to figure out what's going on here. This is just, I'm falling apart. And I didn't feel like it was sustainable. My kids were both grown at that point, and I didn't have the worry about family court and custody. That worry was kind of off my shoulders, and I felt like I had a little more freedom, I guess, to explore options of leaving, but still, it's very difficult. But really, it was just a matter of I just couldn't. It wasn't sustainable to stay.
Mm-hmm. Having kids makes it really difficult to even make that decision.
Yes, it really does.
Yeah. I went through that. I went through that while having kids, and so
Wow.
so my kid, I am co-parenting technically with my ex, and it's a different wild ride.
I've heard a lot of stories, and yeah, I've heard family court is not a place you want to be with a narcissist.
No, it's not.
Unfortunately, judges, lawyers, most don't have experience with these people, and these people come across as so charming,
Yeah.
and so wonderful, and they can win anyone over.
Yeah.
So it really, I've heard it makes family court somewhat of a nightmare.
It really does, and I wound up giving up a lot, and also I got divorced during COVID, and so I wound up giving up a lot just to even get the divorce done with, and it still took 2 years. So
2 years.
Yes, I filed in 2019, and it was not finalized until 2021.
Well,
A lot of that was the courts just being slow, but as the courts were slow, it was like he could use that time to claw back other things.
They do love to draw it
Yes.
out,
Yeah.
and basically just kind of try to choke you out. The more money they can make you spend on legal things, the more desperate they think you're going to get. It's really a game to them.
Yeah. And you were talking,
and they're angry.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, and they will say all kinds of stuff, and the moment you say anything, it's like
Yeah.
it's it's wild. But you were
So,
talking about the physical symptoms that you were experiencing. One of the ones, besides massive stomach issues, that magically went away when it was over.
magically, yeah, for me,
Yeah,
it was like 2 weeks later,
yes,
within 2 weeks, all of my ailments disappeared.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
My
That's pretty
favorite,
telling.
this is weird to say, but my favorite physical symptom was that this is obviously not a wedding ring, it's just a thing, but I used to get stress bumps that would radiate out from my ring finger, whether I was
Wow.
wearing a ring or not. So it's like my
Wow.
body was literally trying to tell me, "Hey, this is the problem."
These are off. Yeah. Isn't that interesting how everyone's body will react differently? But,
Yeah.
it's your body telling you you can't stay in this environment. You have to save yourself.
Yeah.
It's self-preservation is really what it comes down to.
It really is. Really, really is. We got a great question in the chat. Winter, we talked about crocheting earlier. I wish you'd been here, but we were talking about crocheting earlier. Winter says, "Do you crochet? And if no, would you like to learn?" But yes, Mia was talking about crocheting earlier, and I don't know if you want to revisit that and just talk a little bit about what you do crochet
Yeah,
and
I really just I think it was probably during COVID that I started doing it. But I found that it was so therapeutic. I needed something to do. I found the last few years of my marriage, I barely slept.
hmm
I was under so much stress, and my ex-husband, as time went on, and especially toward the end of my marriage, he demanded 24/7 attention. He just thought if he was awake, we everybody had to be telling him how great he was. And I couldn't get any time for myself until he went to sleep. So I found that I was just staying up late into the night. I mean, because I needed to have some me time. I just
yeah.
needed a break. I was mentally exhausted. And I found that crochet was the best way I could find to channel that stress, and put all of that frustration that I was feeling into something really detailed, and then be really proud of of what I created. So it was a huge kind of a life saving hobby, really.
hmm I like that you talked about the at night after he went to bed was the only time that you could get for yourself, because I still have that a little bit with my kids. I'm like, I stay up late not because I don't have to be up early, but because it's when the house is not filled with people who need me.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And for me, it was it was that, and it was when the house wasn't filled with conflict.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was the only time of the day that I could feel some peace. So I sort of sacrificed my sleep, and then of course then I would be tired the next day.
Yeah.
But my ex-husband kind of saw tiredness as a weakness.
Mm,
Oh, you don't need to take a nap, you need to do this and do that, and you shouldn't be tired. You don't do anything to make yourself tired. That whole song and dance. Yeah, I was pretty sleep deprived all the time.
yeah. Yeah, unless my ex was interested in a nap, naps weren't for anyone except the
Wasn't
baby.
allowed, really.
Except the baby.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
and the baby had a reason, but even whenever I had a newborn, it was like, "No, you don't need to sleep when the baby sleeps. You need to be up doing laundry or cooking or whatever, you know. Why are you going to go take a nap when there's so much to be done?" Like,
Right. The interesting thing
"Cuz I'm
is when they
tired."
need a nap, it's perfectly fine. They're completely
Yes.
justified,
Mhm.
for anything they want to do. But if you want to take a nap, you see, that's not about them.
Yeah.
You're not making it about them. Therefore, it's just, why would you do that? Why would you do anything
Yep.
that didn't have to do with me? Yeah, it's exhausting.
Yeah, it really is. I'm tired because you're exhausting. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. I
that's
wish I wish that I had been able to say that, but boy, would that have made things worse at the
oh, that
moment.
yeah, no, and no, in my situation, it's just, that would be one thing that you just would never bring up because it wouldn't be worth the argument that would ensue. Because talk about exhausting. that might lead to a 3-hour lecture
Hmm.
about why I'm wrong. And at the end, it's just you say it's just not worth it. I'll
Yeah.
just take the blame. Yeah, it's my fault, and let's just make this be over.
Yeah.
Because it's not worth the lecture that's coming.
Yeah. Uh, I feel that. I feel that so hard. Yeah, that would be exactly my reasoning behind not saying that. I'll say that to my kids though. Why are you tired? I'm
Right, right,
tired because you're exhausting me. But, you know, they're kids and also they're not like him, so
right.
we're good.
I know a narcissist can't take criticism. There is no
No.
criticism.
No.
It's it's just best to not say anything. I
Hmm.
mean, and then with that kind of mindset, you just start to give up.
Hmm.
You just start to give up ever trying to defend yourself. And then that's where that breakdown comes, where you lose confidence, you start to feel like I can't do anything, and it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's a good segue into my next question, because my next question was going to be, how did the experiences that you had affect your sense of self over the years? Because it really is, narcissistic abuse is just, it wears you down so much. I really do believe it changes you as a person. So what was your
Yeah,
experience with
it
that?
does. I think I went into my marriage, feeling pretty self-confident, feeling like I was capable, that I felt good.
Mhm.
And it didn't take long until I had no self-esteem left. I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust my own decision making. I second guessed everything. And so coming out of the marriage, it was a kind of a fearful time because I had been told basically you can't do anything. Everything you do is wrong. And you're not able to do this or you're not able to do that. And so it was scary because you think, I don't know if I can make it on my own.
Yeah.
I've been told for all these years that I can't. So it does change you. It just, and just that mental exhaustion, being in such an exhausted state all the time, kind of puts you in a fog. So you just sort of lose. I don't want to say you lose touch with reality, but you really start to believe a lot of lies about yourself
Hmm.
that just aren't true. And it takes time to rebuild all of that when you get out.
It really does. And I think that to an extent, it does really change the reality of things for a good long while, because your reality just gets narrowed down so much. And it's
Yeah.
narrowed down to what the person wants it to be. And we talked about this a little bit, but in my case, I had become so cut off from friends and family that I had no one to remind me that, hey, no, you are perfectly capable. No, you are perfectly capable of making a decision about this. No, you can totally trust yourself to, decide this, and no, other people are going to listen to you. And you really just get eroded down so much that it feels so impossible. It's not impossible, but it feels impossible to do
It
anything.
does, especially if you are isolated, and narcissists love to isolate you.
Yes.
The reason being they don't want you to have a support system.
Yeah.
Because if you have people around you, they might say, hey, this doesn't look right.
Hmm.
They don't want anyone planting ideas in your head that maybe they aren't the God that they present themselves to be. So isolation it's a terrible thing, but it's a tactic that they almost all use. I was fortunate I had my parents, and they really saw what was going on.
Mm.
Um, and boy, he didn't like that. I spent a lot of time with my parents, and he would kind of discourage it. I mean, to a sense, he was worried they might be kind of getting in my head. And but I can't really say I had any friends.
Yeah.
I had acquaintances, but not really any friends. And I look back now, and it's kind of that's why, I don't think he really wanted me to.
Yeah. Yeah. We, so I used to be super close with several friends and super close with my family. Fortunately, I recovered some of those friendships, and I'm great with my family again. But we moved closer to his family, and his family had already put up with his bullshit for
Hmm.
his whole life, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
and I was at the time I was very grateful because his mom was a super big help and everything. But whenever I wanted to visit my family, sometimes he would be like, "Oh, well, you go do that." But then he would constantly call me and be like, "When are you coming home?" That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But more often, and this totally sucked. More often though, he would go with me and then as soon as we get there, start saying like, "Ugh, we should leave. Ugh, that was such a shitty
Mm.
comment that your relative just made. We should leave." And he would pull me aside and be like, "Don't make a big scene, but so and so said this to me." And now looking back, I'm like, don't think that actually happened.
Was trying to turn you against your
Yes,
family. I
yes,
mean, because
absolutely.
they were quote unquote in the way.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, it's terrible how they try to pull you away from people like that. But they just want to make sure. I mean, in their mind, in a perfect world, you would have no one else to go to but
Mhm.
them.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. They want to be the center of everything for you and everyone, but for you specifically. So you did leave. How did you begin to heal and rebuild your identity after leaving?
I think I'm still in that process.
Mm,
But yeah, the first thing I did is I found a therapist who had some experience with narcissism. I mean, I think that's important. Not all therapists are necessarily well versed in this. So I found someone who was good. And, I wouldn't say that wasn't any miracle cure, but I think it laid some groundwork for me to start that healing journey. So that was good. I was in therapy for about a year and really just surrounding myself with people who really wanted to be in my corner, and who
yeah.
believed me and who wanted to support me. I got very picky about who I let in my little inner circle. The narcissists love to start a smear campaign when you leave. And
Yeah.
so you do have to be careful who you let in and who you talk to. And I, was able to surround myself with a few people, not a big group, just a few people. Um, and I think that was really life saving to have people to talk to and people that kind of held me accountable to take care of myself, and to not slip into aggression and to not isolate. So those were things I think therapy and then having good people around me were two of the first steps to start this healing journey. But it takes time. You've
Yeah.
got to be patient with yourself. And I was in this relationship for 30 years, so it takes a while to unwind all of that.
Hmm. Most definitely. And did you have any, were these people that you already knew that you were kind of having in your corner? Were they people that you met who
Yeah.
had been through something similar or anything like that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I had, my parents and
Hmm.
then of course my kids were really supportive and I have a best friend that, I've known my whole life, that has just really been super supportive and it makes all the difference in the world having people around you like that.
Yeah. Yeah. What were the biggest challenges for you, do you think, while you were trying to rebuild and kind of reclaim your voice?
I think trying to gain back some of that self-confidence and starting to trust myself, feel like I could do things without second guessing myself at every single turn. And then just, I would tend to want to self isolate
Mm,
and think it's just easier to stay home today, and I would find myself, starting to kind of get on that depression path. And I really had to be careful and mindful that I was getting out in the world and I was, going to the grocery store and going to the mall and doing things like that, and not letting myself slip into this kind of pit of isolation. So that was challenging, but I think as time goes on, you just start to feel a little bit better. Your mind starts to clear a little bit, and you just have to be patient with yourself, really.
Yeah. I think being patient with yourself and giving yourself time. And then also for me, it was having to remind myself not to beat myself up for everything that I put up with and everything that I,
Yes.
you know, stayed through. And it's like, it's okay. You're out now. You did the best you could with the information you had at the time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I have a lot of regrets about
Mhm.
staying because of my kids, and at the time
Yeah.
I thought I was making the right decision. Don't break up your family. You don't want your kids to be children of divorce. That's what we're told, right? That's what society
Yeah.
tells us, but it's not always the best advice. And in my case, I really should have gotten out many years ago. And I didn't. And it is hard to kind of have to deal with that and admit that. But
Mhm.
like you say, at the time, my intentions were good and I
Yeah.
really thought I was making the best decision. Looking back, it really wasn't the best decision. But
Right.
I- you know, at the time, you just, you have the information you have and you do the best you can with it.
Yeah. Well, if it helps, one of the times that I did try to leave, um, I think this was like 2015, but it was one of those things that I was like, I'm done. That's it. Get out. I really kind of laid it out there. And he did use the kids to convince me to stay and be like, exactly what you said. You don't want our kids to be uh, uh, kids with divorced parents, and it's
Right.
never a good thing, and that's not modeling. This gets me now looking back. That's not modeling a healthy conflict resolution in a relationship.
Yeah. And in my situation, that's like my big regret is that my kids only got to see dysfunction.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
did not get to see they didn't get to see a healthy relationship. So then you have to ask yourself, well, they don't know what a healthy relationship looks like now,
Yes.
and so I'm trying to go back and have these discussions with my kids. But that is, yeah, it's a huge regret.
Yeah. Yeah. I am grateful. I obviously didn't leave in 2015. It still took me 4 more years and several more decisions to leave, to actually finally leave. But um, yeah, it was one of those things that it made sense. When he said it, it made absolute sense. And now seeing my kids this many years post divorce and everything, it's like, no, they're so much happier, so much better off.
Yes.
We all are.
When you're married to a narcissist, I think probably most women would agree, women victims, you're not really allowed to be the kind of parent you want to be.
Oh yeah.
I was a stressed out mom all the time, and I wish I could have been more fun.
Mm,
Wish I could have been relaxed, but I couldn't
yeah.
because of the environment I was living in. So, again, another regret. I couldn't be the mom that looking back, that I wish I could have been.
Hmm.
And they will rob you of that opportunity.
Yeah. I am a completely different parent. A
I'm
completely
sure.
different parent than I was when I was married.
Yes.
It's night and day.
Night and
And
day. Yeah.
and I'm so glad.
Yes.
I'm so glad.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely, I can see that. You would be a completely
mhm.
different. I know I am too, even though my kids are grown. Um, I get to, they get to see a side of me that maybe they didn't see all those years growing up.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's a good thing.
Even if they're grown, you're still their parent. You're still modeling
That's
life for
that's
them.
right.
So that's okay. Like it's not too late just because they're over 18.
Right.
Doesn't
Yeah,
mean
that's
your
true.
parenting journey ends.
Yeah, still got a lot of parenting journey left. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
My dad was helping me today with something. So
Okay, there you go. I mean, yeah,
and
never cease to be parent.
I turn 40 next week. So it never ends. It
Oh,
just never ends. They just keep teaching you
it
stuff.
really doesn't.
So this is a question that I really struggled with this one post divorce. How did you find yourself viewing new relationships? How did you rebuild your trust in relationships after you left?
Um, I think I'm still in that process, really.
Mm,
Um, Trying to figure out who to trust. And I'll tell you what
yeah.
has really affected that is this whole smear campaign. My
Oh.
ex-husband, I joke and say, I think he made a spreadsheet of every person that we knew jointly and started, just started checking them off, talking to people. So that has made it hard. I tend to not want to trust people. I
Yeah.
don't know who, I don't know what he's saying. I know it's not good because they always have to save face, right? So he's out there spreading lies about me,
Hmm.
all around town to probably every single person that we knew jointly. I mean, I have people defriending me on Facebook, and I didn't know it was a contest. I didn't know it was a race. I
Yeah.
didn't know we were supposed to get out there and start like claiming
Telling
our
our stories.
allies.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was I mean, it's like a game to him.
Yeah.
So that has greatly affected how I view just, communication and just relationship with other people. I tend to not be too trusting right
Hmm.
now. But hopefully that will change and I'll start feeling better. I'm still, I'm kind of angry about this smear campaign and
I would be too.
I'm a little bit bitter. So it's gonna takes some time to get over, and you think all these people believe these things that are not true about me. And
Hmm.
he's going around saying he's the victim and all of this, and everybody's, oh, poor you. Um, so it's tough. Yeah. I think that just again, it just takes time.
Yeah. Yeah. It it was difficult for me. I still don't have a relationship with a lot of like our mutual friends that we made while we were together. Like I just it's fine. Whatever, you can have
Gotta let
them. I
it
don't
go. Yeah.
just kind of
Yeah.
let that go. For me though, forming new relationships, even new friendships, not just romantic relationships, like it very much has been a journey of, my bullshit detector is off the charts whether it's really
Yeah.
finding anything or not. It's like I'm hyperactive looking for things.
You assume that I think we tend to assume that everyone has an angle,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so I'm just that's what I my go-to is what is it you're looking for,
Yeah.
and I tend to not want to give a lot of information and
Hmm.
yeah, it just makes you a little paranoid. Really
Yeah.
does.
And I
And
wasn't I
maybe
wasn't
paranoid
like
in a
that
good way.
before. Well, it can I think it can be a good thing. I think it can
Yeah,
partially be a good thing. I think it
very cautious.
yes, very guarded, very just like, and I wonder how that come obviously I'll never know how I come off to someone else necessarily unless they're willing to be totally open and transparent with me, but um you don't know how that comes off to other people. Does it come off as you're too, I don't know, too shy or uh,
Yeah,
too critical, or, there's all kinds of ways that people could really take that. Um, but yeah, it has definitely given me this
it's
difficulty.
interesting. Yeah, that's interesting you say that about being guarded because, my one of my closest friends, that's what I was told. It was,
Mm,
you're so guarded now. Like, what has happened to you that you're
yeah.
so guarded? You didn't used to be that way. And I know I didn't used to be that way. So I guess that really does come through now that, just this overabundance of cautiousness.
Hmm.
And again, not a bad thing, but just from where we came from, I think it's a normal reaction.
Yeah. And I definitely used to be very, I assumed prior to this relationship, I assumed everyone had positive intentions until they really
Oh, me
proved
too.
otherwise. And now,
Me
like you
too.
said, I'm very like, what's your angle?
Uh huh.
What is it? What are you after? And
That's exactly.
that never would have come into my mind before. Never.
No, I mean, I was so naive
Yeah.
and I really thought everyone was good and no one had ill
Yeah.
intentions toward
Yes.
me. And why would they, And it just so naive, so naive.
Yeah.
So older and wiser now, and it's been a learning experience.
Yeah. You've talked a lot about just friends and family supporting you and, a lifelong friend and your parents and that kind of thing. How can family and friends best support someone who is either in a relationship where they're going through narcissistic abuse, or maybe they're just out of a relationship and they're starting kind of their recovery journey? What are some things that friends and family can do to support someone?
I think, if you know someone who's in one of these relationships, you really, you know, it, y- I think the best thing you can do is just be supportive in that be available for them to talk to you if they need to, but don't think that you can just go and say, you need to get out
Yeah.
because it's just not that easy. So, but be that person that they can lean on when enough they decide to get out, they know they have a place to go. So, I mean, you can't tell them what to do. The victim, sadly, they have to decide for themselves. They really do, I'm sure it's hard as an outsider looking in and saying, "Oh, how can you live like that? Why don't you just leave?" But just realize how hard it is, and just be supportive. When and if they leave to have somewhere to go.
Yeah.
Um, that would be my piece of advice on that. Yeah.
I think also, and maybe this is too personal to me, but like I'm one of those people that if you text me and I forget to text you back, just text again.
Yeah.
But especially whenever I was fresh out of that relationship, I was awful at responding to people, but it wasn't because I didn't want to respond. It was because I didn't know what to say. And so it was
Yeah.
very like I'm in a crisis and you're just saying like, "Hey, I'm here to support you and if you ever need to talk." And I'm like, "Well, I talked to my therapist and I don't even know what to say to her."
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. I understand that.
so just reach out. Like, if you don't get an answer once, I would say just reach out several. Don't give up. Don't give up. Just
I
continually
mean,
let
and
people know that you're
realize
there for them.
Yeah, I mean, and realize that these people fresh out of these relationships, they need someone to talk
Yeah.
to. And I think in my case, a lot of my quote unquote friends, they didn't reach out,
Hmm.
and you need people to reach out. Like you say, even if you don't respond right away, just let them know
Yeah.
that yes, I care, and I know I understand that you're going through this, and I'll support you.
Yeah. If someone is listening to this right now and they feel like they might be in a similar situation, what would you say to them?
I mean, I think the one thing you need to realize is people tend to think things will get better. If I just stick with it, if I just make myself a little bit better, it'll eventually get better. Narcissism does not get better.
Yeah.
It's proven that it gets worse with age. And so if you are in a relationship with a narcissist, I mean, you really need to explore the option of leaving. It's detrimental to your health. It's detrimental to your physical well-being, your mental well-being, and it just doesn't get better. And I hate to sound so doom and gloom, but it's just those are the facts.
Yeah.
And start thinking about how you can get out and make a better life for yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we are coming up on the last couple of questions. So if you are here live with us today and you have a question for Mia, feel free to pop it into the chat. We'll make sure to get to it. But Mia, while we are waiting on those to roll in, what is your favorite life hack?
Life hack. Um, it's interesting. I think the only thing that comes to mind, I don't really know. The This is silly. I guess it doesn't matter if it's silly, right?
No, go for
Um,
it.
you know what? I love those packing cubes. Is that considered a life
Yeah.
hack?
Yes. Yes.
So like, when I travel, those nifty little like set of 8 packing cubes,
Yeah.
um, so cool. I just discovered them like maybe 6 months ago, and
Hmm.
I'm all about packing cubes
Are
now.
they the ones that you squish down for like space saving, or are you just talking about like organizing in your suitcase?
They don't, yeah, they're not airtight,
Yeah.
but you can pack a lot more in them. You can
Hmm.
get more in your suitcase if you use these cubes.
Interesting.
So organizing and a little bit of space saving. I
Yeah.
love this. Yeah, that's my life hack.
So I went on a big trip to Australia a long time, and I got the cubes that you can pack in, that you pack in them, and they're not necessarily airtight, but you roll them after you pack them. So you're
Uh,
squishing the air out of them, but it doesn't like keep the air out necessarily, but because you've squished the air out, it compresses it a little bit. But that was one of those
More.
things I absolutely loved it.
Makes a big difference.
Yeah, it really does. Okay, and then if you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one common opinion, conception, or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or talking about mental health, what would it be?
Misconception.
Yeah.
Um, I think I think a misconception that I would want to disappear is um, thinking that it's all so linear and simplistic.
Mm,
It's multi-layered. Anytime you're dealing with any sort of mental illness, mental health, it's never as simple as it looks to an outsider. So yeah, I would want to do away with the thinking that it's a simple thing. It's so complex.
yeah, you definitely can't tell. You definitely can't tell what someone is going through from just even if you know them in real life, if you see them every day at work. People at work had no idea. Not a clue.
Still, yeah, yeah, we tend to be good at hiding those
Hmm.
things. So
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're not pretty. They're not the pretty part of life. It's
that's
not the
right.
part that you
Yeah.
want to share. It's not the part that you're like excited to talk about.
No, of course not. Of course not.
Hmm. Well, thank you, Mia, so much for just taking the time to chat with us today. I'm going to post your socials one more time so that if anyone is looking to connect with you or find your website or anything like that, they can do that. And while I'm doing that, I will just pass the floor over to you. If there's anything we didn't talk about or anything else you want to cover that you've got going on, feel free.
Yeah, well, I recently got a website up and running, miajhanks.com, and I'm trying to. I haven't been real consistent, but I'm trying to start blogging a little bit. I have 3 posts right now. I'd like to get eventually to do at least 1 post a month, but please feel free to check that out. I'm trying to just just maybe talk about things that aren't necessarily talked about with respect to narcissistic abuse. Then on my website, I have a link to purchase my book on Amazon, and then a lot of clips, a lot of links to other podcast interviews. So yeah, I just want to sort of get the conversation going out there, raise awareness, and I know there are a lot of victims out there that know, maybe you don't know that
Mhm.
that you are a victim. That was my experience anyway. So I just really want to raise awareness, and I hate to think people, would spend decades in a relationship like this, like I did. So yeah, check out my website, check out my book, and
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story. I know these kinds of stories are really difficult to share, and in some cases, you really can't share about the things that you went through. So please know that I and others are grateful for everything that you are willing to share and everything that you're willing to help raise awareness for. I think you're doing a great thing by doing that. I really do.
thank you for letting me come on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, chat, give me just a minute to disconnect with Mia offline, and I will be right back. Don't go anywhere. Stick around.